Hello, everyone. I'm Neeli Bendapudi, president of the University of Louisville. People often ask me, what makes UofL so special? And I tell them, it's the people. And today, it's my great honor to bring you a conversation with one of those great individuals that make UofL what it is. And this is someone that is well known to people in the community and to individuals at UofL. And this is Dr. Ralph Fitzpatrick. I am eager and anxious and grateful to hear your story, Ralph. So welcome. This is an informal chat. I want people to hear from you, your story of what UofL has meant to you and what you have meant to UofL. So welcome.
Thank you, Neeli. And I so appreciate you. And I'm humbled, actually, by this invitation today to come and have a conversation with you. My journey to the University of Louisville actually dates back some time. It was August of 1970 when I first set foot and had my first experience at the University of Louisville as a beginning first-year student. And Neeli, I would want to say perhaps early on that there are many ways to describe a non-traditional student. We talk about being first generation, we talk about being low income. And I guess if there was ever a picture of a first generation or a non-traditional student in Webster's dictionary, Ralph Fitzpatrick's picture was certain to be there. I grew up in a little community down in rural western Kentucky, Hickman, Kentucky, in Fulton County, about 2,400 residents, the youngest of 12 children, first in the family to have been afforded an opportunity to go away and attend school. And my journey was pretty much typical of individuals back then in that attended high school there at Fulton County High School. You got to picture the time sequence that we're talking about. This is the early 1970s, 1970 in fact. Our schools were integrated first in 1966, and I attended my first 8 years of school. We're in a segregated school setting. We actually, in integrating the schools, and I say this with some sense of concern, but we really didn't integrate. We assimilated the segregated school into, in this case, the high school there. Only one black teacher from the segregated schools actually transferred their position to Fulton County High School and lasted 1 year. So from 1967 through 1970, I attended a school, Neeli, that was still very much segregated in the sense of our faculty, our student body, those who lived in the Hickman area, of course, we attended there, and had an interesting, great ride for 3 years. I honor student, member of the Beta Club, member of the student council, member of the marching band, section head, newspaper reporter for the student. But then something happened. I think that's worthy of note. As you may recall, it was 1968 when we witnessed the death of Martin Luther King Jr., assassination of King. Malcolm X was assassinated, Medgar Evers, and the whole world, pretty much like what we've experienced this past year, in terms of the social unrest that was taking place, was happening back in the late 1960s, 69 and 70. And as a senior in school, I began to question, some of the decisions or non-decisions that our school system was making at the time, and raised questions, both privately as well as in a public setting, about why we did not have, in this case, black faculty there at Fulton County High School. Why, as an example, that we had a black basketball team but no black cheerleaders. And Neeli, I got dismissed. I was dismissed in my senior year. And the cause cited for my dismissal was my failure to adhere to school regulations and dress codes, which at that time, if for those who knew me, you would literally laugh if I were to share with you a picture of Ralph back when his senior year. I had a real light mustache on my face, but the reality of it was that was really the excuse, for the district literally citing me for my civil disobedience, if I might use that expression. I was dismissed. It caught the attention of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, the story did, of my dismissal, along with several other students. Galen Martin, who was the executive director of the commission here in Louisville, Kentucky, actually sent a team down to Hickman to investigate, because we had no due process. We were just told to leave, exit the school. And not only caught the attention of Galen Martin, but it also caught the attention of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. And long story short, Neely, my attorney at that time was Robert Delahanty, who was a noted attorney and figure in Louisville, and his family still is very, very much noted here in Louisville in terms of the legal profession. We actually took and sued our school district there and brought the case to federal court here in Louisville, where after a 2-week wait for a hearing, we were ruled against. And the ruling against us, and by then Judge James F. Gordon, was a ruling that simply said he did not want to set the precedent of dealing with these kinds of issues in his court, but advised my attorney at the time to take it on to the Sixth Circuit of Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, Ohio, and was pretty much sure that we could win. But in the meantime, my attorney, who was an adjunct faculty member at the University of Louisville's law school, was working behind the scenes to see if he couldn't work out some level of arrangement for Ralph to continue on. And you got to understand, I've got elderly parents, and their one wish was that their youngest child was going to get a shot at a higher education. Long story, I arrived at the University of Louisville in August of 1970 without a high school diploma, Neely, nor the GED, but with a full scholarship to the University of Louisville. My attorney had worked out an agreement with the Kentucky Department of Education that all I needed to do was to take one course in public speaking that, for the most part, would substitute for that 1/2 of credit unit in English. I had 18 units at the end of my junior year, which was always required, but I did not have the senior English. So when I arrived there, needless to say, UofL took a mighty chance on Ralph Fitzpatrick. And long story short, that was the start of my academic career. And what got me to the University of Louisville was UofL transitioning as an institution into the state system. And what excited me about the university, Neely, was that at that time we had an individual by the name of Blaine Hudson and others who had taken over by way of a civil demonstration, civic demonstration, civil rights demonstration, president's office, and the university was committed to bringing in the first wave of African-American students at that time. And I was fortunate enough and blessed to be one of those students that the UofL took a chance on.
So one of the things about this is when you were dismissed, what was your GPA? Because we had talked about how it wasn't around academics.
No. My GPA at the beginning of my senior year, they brought all of our seniors into the gym, and they gave us a little sheet of paper that was so big. My GPA was a 97.4 going into the senior year, starting out the senior year. The rumor had it, Neely, that I was to have been, or I should have been, a major candidate or one of the candidates to be valedictorian of my senior class. Now, again, whether or not that was factual or not, I to this day, I can't tell you. But I had a 97.4 GPA going into my senior year.
So A plus walking in.
An A plus, yes.
That's extraordinary.
Nearly the reality of it is I knew that if I had a shot, if I were to get a shot at going to college, it had to have been through academics and not necessarily through athletics or anything, but keeping the grades up, keeping the grades.
So you clearly had support from your family, your parents telling you that you needed to do this, and you talked about Once you arrived at UofL, what kept you going? What was your experience like? What was the support system here?
Neely, we had probably one of the best support systems of all time. We had individuals at the university. UofL had created, as a part of this support system, there was the Office of Black Affairs, okay, staffed by Hanford Stafford, who was the executive director, a young lady that was fresh out of a graduate program. I think you know her, Alice Houston, was on that staff. Brenda Hart, who has recently retired from the university, was a member of that staff, and several others. And these individuals, literally, there were 100 of us, 100 individuals from across the country, Neely. We were told that this office was to be, if you will, the major unit that would support us while we were at the University of Louisville. So they were intrusive in our lives, Neely. I mean, I had to literally, and I thought I was a pretty sharp cookie, to be candid with you, but I had to literally go to tutoring twice a week. I had to meet with counselors like Alice and Brenda Hart once per week, if you will. And the reality of it is my admissions, and not admissions, but our financial aid award and packet was all routed through this office, so they understood the need. And they also assisted us during the course of the summer. So we had that level of support, Neely, and we had each other. You got to remember now, U of L was only, this was first year that we would merge into the state system, 10,000 students, fewer than 200 African-American students at that time, Neely, when I arrived. So small university, but a university that really, you know, because we were small, you know, we were more like I used, my phrase I love to use, is family. Okay, it was like the family, if you will, of individuals who were there. So that's kind of the system that we had in place there.
And what about your interactions with other people on campus? You talk about 200 out of 10,000 Black students. So what was it like? The climate, were you accepted? Were there challenges in, did it feel like an integrated system, as you said?
Well, I think again, we had fewer than, I think there were fewer than 20 African-American faculty at the time, you know, at the university when I arrived. So the 200 students, we pretty much jailed together. Of course, there were the athletes, you know, on our campus at the time, but the students, we all lived pretty much in the dorms, you know, on our campus. So and there was targeted dorms that we lived in, Neely. So we were together. We ate our meals together on our campus, and we pretty much jailed when it came to our studying and labs together and those kinds of things. So it was a pretty much, again, a family atmosphere. And truthfully, to be candid with you, because we were so small, we did have caring faculty. It wasn't just African Americans. I want to step back for a moment. I remember folk like Harold Adams. You probably heard that name before, who was at the University of Louisville, who was reaching out. Dave Lawrence, who happened to be Jennifer Lawrence's grandfather, was our dean of student at the University of Louisville. Denise Guest, who now sits on she's a Kentucky Superior Court judge, if I'm not mistaken. These were all individuals that were at the university that, again, kind of put their arms around us, Neely, and helped us, you know, at the time.
I think that's a really big part, because what we need to succeed is people who care about everybody on campus and say that the success of the university depends on the success of everybody at the university. That's great. So what did you study at UofL?
Neely, I actually graduated, my 2 undergraduate degrees from UofL was one in Pan-African Studies. I might have been the first graduate of the Pan-African Studies program, I'm not sure. And then I took a degree in the School of Educational and Guidance and Counseling. So I still today pride myself on being a member of the helping profession, if you will. My master's from UofL was in Vocational and Community Counseling as well.
Great, that's great. I'm so proud of our Pan-African Studies department and the tradition and history there. So that was a draw as well for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then what happened? You graduate from UofL. What goes next?
I graduated from UofL in 1974. Took 2 undergraduate degrees in 74. Went immediately to work on a master's. Finished it in 1 year, 2 semesters, master's degree. And I took a position with the athletic department. I was the Marvin Mitchell on campus for athletics at the time. One-man show, Neely, one-man show. And I was told that my responsibilities was to make sure that Denny Crum's basketball athletes, and at that case, Vince Gibson, and John and some others will probably remember Vince Gibson, at football. So I had 2 major sports, and I also worked with some of the spring sports, but took that job, worked that job for a little over a year. And then I got called in one day by the dean at that time of University College, who was an African-American male, and said, "Hey, Ralph, I've got a window of opportunity for you." And he said, I'm here today to offer you a job as a board-appointed administrator, okay? And it sounded exciting to me. It was exciting. He said, but the clincher is you've got 30 days. I can only guarantee you a job for 30 days. And what was happening, Neely, to be candid with you, is that our Upward Bound program was in disarray. The feds had visited, the Department of Education federal program officer had visited the campus and said that we will be back in 30 days, and if we don't see this program and some degree of order, we're going to withdraw and pull back the funds. So I took a chance, Neely. I took a chance and accepted the job with Brenda's blessings. At the time, I was married with a child, and for 30 days. And needless to say, Upward Bound is still at the University of Louisville today. Okay, well, so from there, it just kind of propelled my career through a number of different portals. I've worked all sides of the university, Neely. I mentioned to you athletics. I've worked in academics as an assistant dean, founder, director of the university's preparatory division, which was an enrollment unit. I went on to work out of minority affairs for a number of years, served as a special assistant to the president for affirmative action, and eventually meandered over and got involved in during the tenure of President Ramsey in community engagement, which is kind of what I've done.
I know community engagement is near and dear to your heart.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do you see that fitting in with the university's mission?
Oh, Neely, first of all, our mission is to become a premier metropolitan research university. And that word metropolitan to me suggests that it means more than just simply being located in Louisville, Kentucky, in the urban center of the state of Kentucky. It is very much one of the major pillars of our mission. And I like to tell people when I talk with them, and you can see I get excited about this, is that, first of all, I'm a strong believer that the metropolitan mission of the university, the urban mission of the university, and the research mission of the university can indeed coexist. We can coexist, we can do great things. And our university, Neely, is clearly, we've got our footprint in everything that moves in this city. And I dare say, even within the state of Kentucky, you can't talk about education and without the University of Louisville being in that conversation. We can't talk about health without the University of Louisville being in that conversation. We can't talk about economic empowerment in terms of what's going on. So it's clearly engagement, engaging our faculty, engaging our student body. And I just celebrate, what we've been able to achieve over the past several years. And it's not just out of the Office of Community Engagement. It's the work of our faculty and our staff all coming together to make this happen.
Agreed. So reflect, I guess we're letting the cat out of the bag here. You're getting ready to retire, which is why I wanted to make sure we captured this story. And it's very important in my mind for young people to hear what has changed and what has not. There's a part of me that feels disappointed that from when you started to now, that we still have to fight and advocate for social justice and equity and so on. So where do you think society and the university have made the biggest strides, and where is the biggest gap still?
Well, you're right, Neely. There are no timeouts in the real world. That's a favorite cliche of mine. No timeouts. If we could do this, like a referee, would be great, but we can't. So the reality, the reality of it is, the reality at the end of the day is that when I think about society and our university in general, sure, those gaps, those societal gaps, still exist. But I think where we are, Neely, is we have to keep on pushing the envelope. Okay, we have to keep pushing the envelope and not become discouraged, because of the quote pace of things. Okay, and, this is a time now where, like in the past, we got to not only talk the talk, but the universities, the society in general, we've got to walk the walk, and that's because there are so many dependent upon us. There are a lot of Ralphs that are still out there that need, if you will, that support of individuals to be there and know that they can count on these individuals. I tell people we still have basically a first generation college going group of students today.
Yes, we do.
And if you look at our faculty, we still have basically a first generation group of young African American faculty and faculty of color today. So those levels of support, being able to be supportive of one another, I think that's our greatest window. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the work that you're leading with the CARA initiative that's on the table. I'm excited about what's on the table in terms of our strategic plan. So yes, while I am contemplating and getting excited about retirement, I'm a Cardinal for life, Neely. So I'm going to be looking in and following, if you will, this work that started. Today, we do have, I think we should be proud of the fact that our African American student enrollment, our students in general, both Hispanics, Latinos, and African Americans and others, the numbers are going up. We're maintaining a steady flow there. Our faculty number far distance than what went back in 1970 when I came on board. Okay, so I'm excited about that, and I think that there again, as long as folk of goodwill and well intentions can still come to the table and work together as a family, if you will, and as a team, we can make those.
Wise words. You're so right. We've come a long distance, but there's much farther that we need to go.
Absolutely.
And I make that commitment as well, as you know. So we just have to keep working. And by the way, for you, just like they say there's no such thing as a former Marine, you're a Marine forever, there's no such thing as a retired, Cardinal for life. I get it. Tell us a little bit about your family. I know your better half, but tell me about the Fitzpatrick family and what you're hoping to do during retirement.
Well, Neely, in August of this year, Brenda and I will celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, that's
50 years.
Spectacular.
Congratulations. I often refer to her as my journey partner. We dated for 3 years before we got married. She was my high school sweetheart. Dated her since I was a sophomore, and she was a freshman in high school. So 50 years later, we have two wonderful sons that I not only like, but I love. And I say, I love them. Or maybe I should have said I love them.
You love them and you like them.
And I like them. And my oldest son, Ralph Jr., works out at McKisson out in Chevyville. He's a lead supervisor there, married and been married for about 5 years, and we have one grandchild, with Junior in that union. And then my youngest son, Byron, is a 13-year teacher in the Jefferson County Public Schools.
Fantastic.
So, and he's right now in the principal certification program. So we're looking for great things out of him. So Brenda and I, right now, we're still trying to make up our minds what we're going to be when we grow up, if I might use that expression. Yes. Okay, and the plans at this point, Neely, is just to kind of relax a little bit from the work. I mentioned growing up in rural Western Kentucky. Neely, I've worked all of my life. I mean, that's the reality of it is. I kind of want to use this opportunity to just relax. retool a little bit, read, if you will. I came to UofL initially. I said my degrees were in Pan-African Studies and Education, but what initially I thought that I would be pursuing was a career in music. So I'm a musician. Okay, I'm a musician, and one of the things that I might do is just kind of bug Teresa Reed over in School of Music and kind of take a few courses over there, you know what I mean, and do that, and enjoy myself on that front. But the key is just to kind of chill. And I like that word chill. You know, that's kind of what we're going to be doing in the meantime now.
I love it. Retirement is repurposing your time. That's what it is. So wonderful to hear. And I hope everybody gets a chance to hear this and hear your story. And I forgot to tell everybody, because it's important to me, that the reason you and I are not wearing masks today is that both of us have been vaccinated. And so please don't let down your guard. You've got to mask up and get that vaccination. Incredibly important.
Ditto.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ralph Fitzpatrick. It's an honor. And I look forward to all the time that you have, which means you can volunteer for us even more. So thank you, everybody. And thank you for joining us.
I'm honored, Neely. Thank you.